Good morning. I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson and I'll be chairing this hearing of the Subcommittee A of Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can you all please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the procedure. Can you also turn off your cameras with the exception of committee members unless you're the person speaking? This is to reduce bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones on silent and ensure they're situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or any unnecessary noise emanating from radios, TVs, etc. Thank you for that. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It's vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or another date and time under the regulations for these types of meetings. I also confirm that this is a public meeting and therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. This is a public meeting and it will be webcast for live and subsequent broadcast by the Council's meeting YouTube site via the link in the agenda, and that members of the press public may record and take photographs except where there are confidential or exempt items. Members are reminded that they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations must be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies were submitted on behalf of Councillor Davis and Councillor Beauchamp, and Councillor Diane Donaldson and Councillor Sharp were the nominated substitute members. Can I welcome you to this hearing for an application in respect of Yardbirds Chicken Limited, 1505 to 1507 Pershaw Road, Sturchley, Birmingham, B30 2JL. I'll begin with some introductions. As stated previously, I'm Councillor Diane Donaldson and I'm chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee. With me are the other members of the subcommittee, Councillors Mike Leddy and Martin Straker-Wilds. Also present in the meeting are the following officers: Licensing Officer Bapinda Nandra.
Morning, Chair.
Good morning. Committee Meeting Manager Louisa Nesbitt.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. And Committee Lawyer Joanne Swampillai.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning. Could I ask all parties to identify themselves, please? First, the applicant, Duncan Craig.
Morning, Chair. I'm not strictly the applicant. I'm here to represent the applicant. There are two people on behalf of the applicants. Paul, I'll just turn the camera. Paul Desmond and Jay Jones are both here, who are both involved in the restaurant, the proposed restaurant, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask if any persons making representations wishes to withdraw their representations at this stage of the meeting? No?
Chair, the objectors are not in attendance.
Okay, thank you. I'll assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee's procedural rules sent out by the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you that any such amendments will not impact on the parties' right to a fair hearing. We'll be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. click the speech bubble to go into chat. If you do not have access to the chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. And that's the button. It's usually fourth from the right on the toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name now? Officers will also type their job title. The meeting will not proceed until you've all done so.
That's confirmed, Chair.
Thank you, Louisa. Please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. If any participant has dialed in on an audio telephone rather than Microsoft Teams, please speak now to confirm that you can hear and be heard. Okay, so with the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your camera on unless you're the person speaking. If there are any problems with bandwidth which cause difficulties with the sound, I may, in my discretion, ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone able to hear and be heard. Does anyone wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak into the chat function or using the raise a hand function now. Okay. Thank you. I'll now briefly outline the procedure which we'll be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer, Bhupinder Nandra, will present the report. Then the applicant and their representative will be asked to present their case. We're asking you if this be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Then those making representations will be invited to make their case. Again, approximately 20 minutes will be allowed for this part of the hearing. Can ask all parties to speak as slowly and as clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes, and the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time it is somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but we'll try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or those present, please signify this by using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you're viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I do not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which the questions are dealt with. Additionally, you may also seek to notify a question or point verbally in the usual way at the appropriate point. So at any point of the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they've just said. It is therefore important that you use the chat function as soon as you're unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused by people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I remind everyone to please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras when you're not the person speaking. Could I point out occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. At my discretion, I may ask all parties in the meeting, whilst members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note that if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website fails, I will ask you to mute your microphones and cameras and stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time this meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. Can I stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard? At the decision-making stage, the members and the relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that members need to clarify any point, you'll be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make the decision. Notification of the determination of the application will be sent out to all parties within 5 working days. I hope that's reasonably straightforward. So with that, can I ask the licensing officer?
Thank you, Chair.
To present the report, please, as slowly and as clearly as you can, please.
Yardbirds Chicken Limited applied on the 4th of August 2021 for the grant of a premises licence for Yardbirds 1505 to 1507 Pershore Road, Sturchley, Birmingham, B32JL. The purpose of the report is to consider a representation that has been made in respect of an application for a premises licence which seeks to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption both on and off the premises to operate from 9 AM until 12 midnight Monday to Sunday, to permit the provision of late night refreshment to operate both indoors and outdoors from 11 PM until 12 midnight Monday to Sunday. The premises is to remain open to the public from 9 AM until 12:30 AM Monday to Sunday. Other dates and times are specified in the application form. A representation has been received from other persons, which is attached at Appendix 1. The application is attached at Appendix 2. Conditions have been agreed with West Midlands Police and the applicant, which are attached at Appendix 3. The site location plans are attached at Appendix 4. When carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options available to the subcommittee today are to grant the licence in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the licence subject to conditions modified to such an extent as considered appropriate, exclude from the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, or to refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No. So is that all the submissions? Yeah, sorry. Would the applicant or their representative like to make their presentation now, please? Duncan Craig.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody had a nice weekend. I'm here to represent the applicant. This is a premises on the High Street in Sturchley. It's former TSB Bank. It looks like a bank. I've been down to the site on 2 or 3 occasions. Done a lot of applications in Sturchley in the last 12 months. I think in my time in Birmingham, people have been talking about Sturchley as perhaps the new Notting Hill, or such comparisons have been drawn. But I think it's fair to say, certainly based on my experience on the ground, that things are starting to to happen there, and there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. I think I've probably done about 4 or 5 applications in the last year on in and around the high street, and this is a further string to Sturchley's bow, in my view. It's a fairly modest application in terms of the hours that are being sought. Firstly, and I think this is important for you to consider, members, is the fact there's no regulated entertainment on the licence, and nor will there be any need to at any point. It's simply going to be background music being played. The licensable activities being applied for are alcohol by retail, the sale of alcohol by retail, and provision of late night refreshment, both until midnight, with a terminal hour or closing time of midnight, and that is in conjunction with other premises in the area. It certainly is not. In fact, there are other premises I represent around there who have longer hours than that, but client is entirely happy with that. You'll have seen the supporting documents that I've provided, which I've sent a redacted copy through this morning. So I apologise to your officers. I failed to do that last week. That was an oversight on my part. But you can see, and I'm sure you've all got those before you. There is some promotional information on my client and what they're about. And clearly, if I ask you to turn to page 4 within the supporting documents that I've provided, you can see there that they effectively have been operating for about 10 years, providing fried chicken at festivals locally. Obviously involved in Independent Birmingham and Digworth Dining Club, all of which we'll all be familiar with. Also, I know they've worked in conjunction with clients of mine at the Custard Factory, and also Moseley Folk Festival as well. So that they have a good standing in the area, and they simply want to open up a restaurant in Sturchley to offer the same food as they offer in the festivals that they're involved in. And of course, you may very well have some questions for them. There are 3 people involved: Paul Desmond, who sits with me, Jay Jones, who also sits with me, and also Jenny Dealey, and they're also involved in the Bourneville Waffle Company and have been for about 10 years. And Jay Jones owns the wonderfully named Titanic. So you may have some questions about that. So I put this application in a little while back, and there have been 3 interventions, I suppose, for want of a better expression. First of all, West Midlands Fire Service got in touch and had some queries about the fire safety steps that the premises was undertaking, and that was dealt with, so there wasn't a representation from them. You'll then see, and that's contained in actual fact towards the back of the agenda pack at page 24. Mark Swallow asked if the premises were going to do food deliveries and deliveries of alcohol, and their intention is at some point in the future to do that. And so those conditions that are there are aimed to tackle that. And you can see on the basis of that West Midlands Police's objection was dealt with and withdrawn. Not that it perhaps amounted to an objection, but certainly any issues that they had were dealt with by way of those conditions. And then there has been one representation from a local resident. And so let me just deal with that first, if I may. So if I'll invite you to turn to page 3 in the agenda pack, just make a number of points about this objection. And then I'll deal with the correspondence that I've undertaken with the objector. First of all, says alcohol will always have a rowdy and antisocial behaviour. Well, I simply don't agree with that. That's plainly wrong. There are many licensed premises where there's no rowdy or antisocial behaviour as a consequence of them being licensed. It is on a busy road, and whilst I would never begin to suggest that people shouldn't be entitled to expect a reasonable level of quiet enjoyment of the properties, equally it is right to say that people who live in urban areas have to expect a greater level of interference, particularly on a busy road, than those who don't. And I don't think anyone could reasonably argue with that. But what we've attempted to do here with this application and the subsequent steps have been taken is introduce mitigation measures in order to tackle those concerns. He's raised the objector. I won't name him just simply because I know that his name was redacted from the publicly published documents. But he's raised the issue about the smoking area to the rear, and so my client has in the email that I sent has said that the smoking area in fact will be to the front. Walls between the property aren't very thick. I can't really do a great deal about that. But again, he says the noise will be overwhelming. Again, there's just no evidence to support that. I would submit that's speculative. He's also raised the issue of delivery drivers. Well, you'll have seen, hopefully, members, that the applicant has offered a further condition that there will be no deliveries between 7 at night and 7 in the morning. So hopefully that goes to tackle the concern that's been raised there. And then he goes on to make reference to the hairdressers, which again that's not really anything down to my client. So look, there've been issues that are raised there, and then if I then invite you to turn in my supplemental pack to page, let's go backwards in fact. So page 11. You can see that is the objection there. I've been spoken to your officers about contacting this individual and have done so. Contacted him directly via email. You can see that I'm just effectively inviting him to enter into dialogue with me on behalf of the applicant. He then responded to me, page 9, and he raises, says he only wants contact via email, raises some issues there. I said I would get back to him at the end of the weekend, which I did on the 14th of September. And you see what I have to say there. I don't need to read it out verbatim, but simply that there is a noise management plan, and that will be particularly targeted in relation to the properties at the rear of the premises. The smoking area is going to be at the front of the premises. The deliveries, as I said, that condition, and I confirm that formally in this hearing. Just confirming again the position in relation to regular entertainment, and then just effectively inviting the objector, hoping that has tackled his issues. But if he has any further issues, he was free to contact me. He didn't. That's fine. That's a matter for him, and he's not here today. And again, that's equally a matter for him. Although I am duty bound to point out that obviously, if somebody is here and able to give an account and answer questions, then you can perhaps form a more rounded view of the matters that they're raising. But you have his objection before you, and we have a statutory duty to address that. So that's it really. I'm briefer than normal from my point of view. Sorry, forgive me. I did make one error, which is that Paul Desmond has been involved in, or Yarborough has been going for 4 years, not 10. That was my error. Apologies for that. But that's it. The application, as I say, midnight, alcohol by retail, late night refreshment. Hopefully, there are clearly environmental health have not made any representations, so they're clearly content with the scope of the application. There are no extant representations from any responsible authorities, and again, I'll just point you to 9.12 in the guidance in that regard. And to remember that the guidance also says that the determination that you make should be based around the objections that have been raised, and I would hope that those issues have been tackled by way of the operating schedule and the subsequent condition. So for all those reasons, I invite you to grant the application, and obviously if you have any questions now, we're more than happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Craig. Is that all the submissions on behalf of the applicant before we go to members' questions?
It is, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members?
Yes, Chair.
Councillor Liddy.
Mr. Craig, if we have a look at the schematic drawing that you provided, and it's in the agenda pack, I've got it down as page 25 of 28.
Yeah.
The rear of that schematic drawing is the rear outdoor area.
Yeah.
Which is also going to be part of the licensable area. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's 50% or almost 50% of the size of the area where covers are. What is the purpose of that area at the rear?
It will be to provide dining and for people to sit out there and consume food and drink.
Okay, so that is going to be open from what hours are you proposing?
9 a.m. till midnight.
Till midnight.
Well,
and how many covers?
How many covers would you say outside there?
Best like 20.
20.
Yeah.
Okay. And how many covers are on the inside?
40, 50.
50 at best, really.
So, yeah, on that basis, I wouldn't accept your 50%. It's a little over a third.
No, I said of the, if you take out the kitchen area, the bar area, and the ancillaries and the toilets, it's about 50%, if not more, of the area on which covers are.
Yeah,
I think you'll agree.
I would agree, but I would also say that effectively 2/3 of the covers are inside. The number of people, which is ultimately should be the principal concern.
Well, it is now, because I've just been told that 20 outside and 40 on the inside, and I'll accept that.
50 on the inside.
Yeah, 50 on the inside. Yeah, well, I'll accept that. Now, you are, I doubt it, but I know that you work very long hours, but are you or have either of your clients ever worked night shift?
I don't know. Have you ever worked night shift?
We naturally work quite long hours with the nature of the events that we do. So if we work at festivals, for example, they can be quite long hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're quite sort of in tune with that, really. Yeah.
Yeah. I do know a little bit about the hospitality, and I do know long hours are part and parcel of it. But it's on, if you are a regular night shift worker, as the objector is, having your sleeping patterns during the shift, the slightest noise can wake you up very abruptly, having done nights for a good part of my working life, and therefore your sleeping patterns are completely out of kilter. And I'm just wondering, how are you addressing those unforeseen noises during the day?
Well, there will be, obviously, there is a requirement for a noise management plan that has to be active. That will be, I mean, the premises is currently not finished. I mean, there's a significant amount of work that needs to be undertaken. And they've undertaken to target particularly the rear area in respect of that noise management plan, because there's a recognition that he's clearly raised that as a concern, the objector, and so that will be targeted, and that is a condition on the licence that the premises will be required to comply with. And as I said in my email, Councillor Leddy, these premises are only going to survive and thrive if they enjoy good relations with the local community. And I am duty bound to say that it is a very well populated area, and it's not like we have a tranche of objections here. We have one objection. I'm not saying we can't take that into account. Absolutely we can, and absolutely right that we do. But you can also take into account the fact that there are a number of other residents. You've obviously seen the supporting emails that have been sent in. What's just one second. What's it? I mean, are you gonna have speakers out there?
Not really. No.
If you want to put a condition that no external speakers, that's absolutely fine, Councillor Leddy. You think that's appropriate? I'm conscious of the fact that, I mean, look, this area could have been unlicensed and simply the off sales could have been provided for in any event, but my client has chosen to include that as part of the area, and that perhaps makes him more subject to regulatory scrutiny than they otherwise would be. But certainly if you want to put that condition, and obviously the noise management plan as well, but people will be sat out there as part of this process. But that would be the case if this license didn't exist. That's so, but they do not want to have poor relations with their neighbours. That just is in nobody's best interests.
Okay. Not a problem. If I can move on to the next point, you're saying that the smoking area is outside to the front.
Yep.
So basically what you're saying is that the premises is a no smoking premises because the frontage is the Queen's Highway, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if I quite used that expression myself, Councillor Leddy, but
it is the Queen's Highway.
Highway, yes. It's just not an expression I frequently use, but yes, it is. As a legal professional, I can confirm it is the Queen's Highway.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're a bit too close for me, Councillor Leddy. That's what it is.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Leddy. Thank you, Mr. Craig. Are there any further questions from members?
Yes, please, Chair, if I may.
Yes, Councillor Straker-Wells.
Thank you. My question is related to the ones raised by Councillor Leddy. Insofar as, particularly at night, noise does carry, and it is a little bit more sometimes intense, a little bit more obvious than it would be during the day if it's disguised by traffic, for instance, and so on. So I can imagine that noise, you have a noise management plan, but I can imagine that noise can proceed not just from antisocial behaviour, but also from people having a very good time. So what I wanted to ask about is the kind of euphoric noise that sometimes emanates from really popular institutions like pubs, whether that is part of your management plan. And I say this with some feeling, as I do have some experience of this from one of the most popular pubs in the locality, which often goes into the early hours of the morning with sounds which are very happy sounds, but nevertheless, with the banging of car doors and with the yo-ho-hoing that sometimes goes on when people are, as I said, in a state of euphoria, adds to the unpleasantness and discomfort for people. It doesn't necessarily mean it's intentional, but it can result from the fact that people are simply having a good time. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Straker-Wells, could I just inquire as to what pub you're referring to so I can potentially draw a comparison?
Okay. I don't know if you're familiar with Moseley.
I've been there once or twice.
Okay. There is, am I allowed to mention this pub, Chair?
Yes, councillor.
Okay.
Using your local knowledge, I just
Yeah.
want to draw a comparison so I can perhaps respond more.
There is, there is an immensely popular pub that is a magnet that draws custom from right across the area and beyond. And it's called the Covered Wagon.
Okay.
And I have the good fortune to live quite close to that pub, and I have the good fortune also from time to time to benefit from not only its food, but also its splendid drink. And my question is prompted by what I regard as often good-humoured people taking leave of each other before folding themselves into the taxi on their way back, very late at night. No antisocial behaviour intended, no bad behaviour at all, but nevertheless still producing noise, which can be difficult for shift workers or people who really do require their sleep. So forgive me if this has been a bit long drawn out, but I do hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
No, in actual fact, I've driven past the Covered Wagon on a few occasions. I've never actually been in, so perhaps but I know people at my chambers speak very highly of it. In fact, they do speak very highly of it. Do they have? It's bigger, isn't it? It's significantly bigger than what is it? You say about 100 covers.
And it's
yeah, and it's
the Covered Wagon as well, and I would say that's a reasonable estimate.
So, sorry, what did you say, Councillor Donaldson?
Yeah, I know the Covered Wagon from past experience, and I would say that's a reasonable estimate.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And it is, I mean, it is more what we would say in the trade to be wet led than my premise that my clients looking to have a restaurant. They don't have regulated entertainment. They won't have regulated entertainment. That obviously, if you have regulated entertainment, the music's louder. People have to talk louder. That tends to make them more rowdy. I would just make the point that certainly based on my experience, that's the Pershore Road is busy day and night in terms of traffic. I don't think that ever. It might abate slightly as the night goes on, but it's still fairly. So there's still a lot of background, residual background noise in any event. And you made reference. I'm pretty sure the Covered Wagon has a later license at midnight, doesn't it? I think
2 o'clock.
Well, there we go. And this is just midnight. I'm not going to suggest a condition that people don't enjoy themselves. I don't think that's going to be particularly enforceable either. But clearly, my client, look, this is a small premises, relatively speaking, and be easier for them to contain that. And they will be mindful of the fact that they have people upstairs and need to be mindful of that, and that their dispersals policy will be aimed at that. And I guess the dispersals policy that's in there as well is obviously designed to get people away from the premises in an orderly fashion, in a quiet fashion. And clearly that's easier to manage that at midnight than it is at 2 in the morning as well. I would make that point as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I just ask a question, Mr. Craig? The highway in front of the premises, what is the width of it, just to get an idea?
It's not hugely wide, and the reason I know that is that I applied for a pavement license a little further along a little while back for another client I've got along there, and it was rejected because it wasn't wide enough for the furniture and for a wheelchair to pass. But it is, I did actually measure it out. It is about, give or take, 2 meters. So it's not huge, but actually that's not a bad width. It's all right, I would say. 2 meters, certainly enough for 4 or 5 smokers to be stood there, and for it not to be causing an obstruction for people trying to get past.
Thank you. Any other further questions from members before we move on?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Reddy.
Can I ask? I mean, these premises have grown upstairs. Is the upstairs going to be converted into a restaurant at some time in the future?
No. Upstairs,
2 flats.
2 flats upstairs.
Right. Okay.
2 flats.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, so there's, as we don't have any further representations, I'll revert back to Mr. Craig for his final submission, closing submission.
Yeah, just one thing, Councillor Donaldson, you said that my client would be written to after 5 days, but my recent experience is that you've been making decisions and turning them around on the same day, going back to the old way of working. Is that the case today, is it?
That's the case, yeah, that's the case ongoing.
Very well. Okay, thank you. Not really a great deal I probably need to say, given the fact that I'm not having to respond to anything from the objector. You are absolutely duty bound to take into account the representations that have been made. I believe they've been tackled by way of the mitigation measures in the application, the modest hours that are being applied for. My client has experience in running catering operations throughout the city, as perhaps Councillor Shaker-Wells has alluded to, licensing decisions are a balancing exercise between the legitimate rights of local residents to not have interference with their lives, but for people to actually go out and enjoy themselves and have a good time together, but for that to be managed in a responsible way. And I believe this application, as it now stands, represents a good balance between those two competing interests. And so I would invite you to grant the application as it now stands, given the oversight that's been given by responsible authorities and the fact that their representations are no longer extant. So on that basis, I invite you to grant the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I'll now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into private session while the subcommittee makes its decision.
Sorry, Louisa, do you want us to stay online or do you want us to leave?
Yes, Chair, if we go back to the private meeting to make a decision.
Yeah,
So I
and then
stay online then, yes?
stay online.
No, Mr. Craig, we'll send the decision out in writing later today. You don't have to stay online.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, John.
Great.
So you'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days.
Very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.